In tonight's Tax Insider, lawmakers grease the skids on the aviation bill. Last month, the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act of 2016 was introduced in the Senate. It's viewed as must-pass legislation. But surprise, surprise, plenty of unrelated provisions tried to hitch a ride. Joining me with the latest is Ryan Alexander, president of the non-partisan Taxpayers for Common Sense. Ryan, let's start with a history lesson. This isn't the first time an FAA reauthorization bill has been viewed as must-pass legislation. Take us back to 2011.
In 2011, when the FAA bill was up, there was a big dispute between the House and the Senate. The House wanted to do aggressive reforms to the Essential Air Service, a program that provides subsidies for flights to rural airports. And the Senate was reluctant to do that, and that's a kind of typical dynamic on that program, which we side with the House on. We think it's pretty wasteful. But they ended up leaving town for the August recess without having come to a compromise, and the FAA authorization bill expired. So we didn't collect ticket taxes that go into the airport trust fund. There were a bunch of workers furloughed. It was really there was a lot of political egg on the faces of people in Congress because just in August, as people are taking their vacations, there was a lot of disruption at the airports.
Right, I remember that very well now. Now let's get back to the 2016 version. What is it designed to do?
So it's designed to reauthorize the Federal Aviation Administration so it can collect ticket taxes, so it can continue to operate the airports, can make sure that it can prioritize and make investments in operating airports. But, you know, as is often the case, some things are getting kind of attached.
You're right, because amendments have been popping up left and right. As we speak, the bill is still in flux. What were lawmakers trying to tack on?
So there are a bunch of lawmakers who are trying to kind of use this bill, which they see as one of the few things that will actually pass Congress this year. It's not at the 11th hour quite yet, but it is one thing that has to pass this year, this summer, as a way to attach energy tax credits that didn't get attached to the bill that passed at the end of the year, the Taxpayers bill at the end of the year. So carbon capture bill tax credits, biomass tax credits, things that weren't included in the big package that passed in December, which did include a 5-year extension for the wind production tax credit and some other kind of newer, more renewable energy sources that both Democrats and, depending on what state they're from, some Republicans support.
Now, this is part of a pattern that you call a crazy quilt of tax expenditures that favor every type of energy source going. You explained that pretty well, but explain more. Well,
the other piece of information that's important for this is that, so in the permanent tax code, there's a bunch of energy tax provisions. So the oil and gas tax credits are part of permanent law. So they've been on the books for, in some cases, as long as 100 years.
Wow.
Then there are other energy tax credits that get added temporarily, but they keep getting renewed. So the wind production tax credit was something that was always renewed on an annual basis, and it was seen as kind of a big extension that in the December package, it got extended for 5 years. There were other provisions that got added to the permanent tax law in December. So they are out of this extender life cycle problem of having to get re-upped every year, and they got made permanent. Not with, we don't know how to pay for that. What people are trying to do now on the FAA bill is just add more to that, create permanent tax provisions for many more energy sources.
Now, Ryan, let's talk about the big picture here. Normally, this type of legislative combination is saved for a year-end omnibus spending bill. Why is this happening in April now?
So it's happening in April now because this is an election year and we have an incredibly paralyzed and unproductive Congress.
No surprise
So they
there,
see this bill, which needs to, I think nobody wants to relive what happened in 2011 with people sitting around at airports saying, what's going on? And so they've got to pass this bill by July 15th, and they see this as something that will pass. There is trouble in Congress, and these various provisions may not make it onto the FAA bill. We heard as recently as today that they may try to pass a clean bill, which would probably mean that for every single thing that they're trying to attach to the FAA bill, they'd try to do it on an omnibus at the end of the year. It's also possible that some of these provisions will make it onto the FAA bill and that they'll just drop, others will be pushed off to the end of the year. It's really about making sure they have enough votes. And I think with everything that was proposed over the last couple of weeks to attach itself to the FAA bill, it was starting to feel like it was going to get weighed down.
Your job never gets boring. Ryan Alexander, president of the nonpartisan Taxpayers for Common Sense. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.